I'm Mike Costello, and I'm here with Dr. Iris Freelander, and today we're going to talk about dealing with pain. In metaphysical New Thought philosophy, we talk so often about the fact that we live in our minds and not in the world, that so much of what happens to us takes place within our own minds. And we understand completely that physical pain comes from a variety of sources, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today and how to deal with it. But we're also going to talk about emotional pain and how to deal with those difficult circumstances and situations. So I guess one way to begin, Iris, is to start by talking about the fact that physical pain is probably the easiest, so we'll save that for a little later. But emotional pain is something that so many people have a great difficulty with, and I guess all of us from time to time have to deal with that reality.
Yes, indeed we do, and it becomes physical pain after a time if we don't do something about it, doesn't it?
It does. And the kind of emotional pain that we suffer in many instances is brought about by either the behavior of other people or the way that we perceive that behavior.
That's the key, isn't it? It's our perception. We go through life on a perception, and one after the other. And very often, what people mean is not exactly how we take it that they mean it. So we put ourselves through a lot of pain and agony unnecessarily. If we would just assume that everyone is on their best behavior, that everyone means well, that people don't mean to hurt feelings, then it would be life would be easier for us.
And that really is one of the major sources of emotional pain is hurt feelings.
Yes.
And we get hurt because of a variety of things, none the least of which are the fact that we believe that people should be saying or doing something different than what they have said or done.
Yes, and we all fall into that trap of hearing what someone says and then adjusting it to our own perception, to our own way of thinking. And I had a recent experience with that. I'd written a very strong letter, and a young friend of mine read it. And it was a letter to the editor, to the local paper. And so she said, and I wondered what her response would be. And you know what it was? She said, "I would hate to have you angry at me because you really write a very well done letter." And it somewhat hurt my feelings that she would say, "I would hate to have you angry at me," as if I would write a terrible letter about her, because we wouldn't have that situation in our lives. But I realize it's my own perception, and that was her perception, and she has a right to it.
Mhm. And as we perceive or think about why other people have done or said things, we often miss the point of what they've said.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And so we have to be more large-hearted in our thinking, and not think small, not think in just our own perimeter, because when we do, then we're going to think universally, and we're also not going to personalize what people say. And I think people who go through life happy and cheerful are those who don't take exception to just everything that's said, don't you?
Mhm. And that's so much a part of what we talk about in this program and what metaphysical philosophy is about. And that is being able to condition the way that we think and the way that we respond to circumstances and situations and the way that we respond to daily living. Because what we talk about in this program and at the church and the center and in our counseling is the ability of people to, in a very practical way, be able to deal with the realities of human and spiritual life. But as we deal with the realities of human life, we have to accept the fact that from time to time, people are going to do and say things that are going to cause us to feel discomfort. And we need to be aware of the fact that our thinking, our own process of thought, is conditioned along a certain line. And many of us are conditioned, and our thought process is that we always tend to see the negative, and we hold on to that negative aspect of something that was either said or done and allow it to hurt us.
That's right. That is, if we are creating pain for ourselves. But if we're not creating pain for ourselves and we see it in a universal way and we see that, well, that's their perception this moment, and we can rationalize it away and not feel personal about it. And I think that persons who are able to do that are also able to be forthright and stand up and say what they think without personalizing it. And the other person to whom they directed their negativity, then don't take it personally. And it makes for better, it's somewhat like good negotiation. instead of an attack or being judgmental.
And it enhances the ability to communicate,
Yes.
which is one of our greatest difficulty as human persons, being
Yes.
able to communicate one with another, and is one of the core problems of relationship difficulties, is that lack of ability to communicate. We also should probably touch on the fact that people who tend to be hurt more easily and more often, and a very important issue too for our listeners and viewers, is that if we're individuals who are hurt often, we ought to look at that. We ought to look at
Yes.
our mental attitude, reaction to circumstances and situations, and understand that we're opening ourselves to a lot of pain. But if we go back to the fact that self-esteem and our own self-image has a great deal to do with whether or not we can be hurt,
Yes.
or how easily we can be hurt.
Yes. And we can be hurt slightly so that we don't understand why someone is doing that and we wish they wouldn't, but still it wouldn't just really hit us hard. Or we can do the opposite. And people who are healthy and strong and go through life productively are usually the ones who give everyone the benefit of the doubt. And then if someone does, in fact, attack them, then they just think, well, that's their perception and they have a right to their opinion. And not everybody's going to like me or like what I'm doing or approve of my actions. And then not personalize it and not internalize it.
And the core of that goes back to that individual self-image.
Yes.
And the fact that despite what was said or done, the individual is strong enough in their own sense of self
Yes.
to know that they can discount or invalidate the comment that was made.
Yes, and we do affirmations at church a lot, as you know, and as you lead us in doing. And I think people who don't have a high self-esteem and those who do get their feelings hurt easily, which would be their own perception allowing that to happen, well, they could do affirmations and say, I am a child of God, and therefore pain or therefore whatever it is doesn't touch me. Or they could do some affirmation, and it would really help. And if they would just not allow this to touch them personally, not internalize it, then it would become a habit.
And part of that habit on the negative side is many people get in the habit of allowing these things to hurt them,
Yeah.
and then reliving the hurt and allowing it to come back again and again. And one of the things we know about emotional, psychological, and spiritual pain is that as we allow it to revisit us, it becomes more intense, and it continues to bring about the same feelings or worse feelings.
Yes.
And one of the very negative dynamics that we can get into from a mindset or a mind dynamic standpoint is that we can hold on to those negative hurts and those pains and really refuse to let go of them, because they become a mechanism for a variety of other things to take place in our lives. So we have to be very cautious of how it is that we're responding to the negativity and how we're allowing it to revisit us in our lives again and again. We've all had experiences, you and I, and anyone who's involved in counseling has had experiences where we talk with people who simply relish rehashing a painful experience.
Yes.
And probably one of the most common is in relationships. And when we talk to people in troubled relationships, we talk to people whose marriages are in great difficulty, oftentimes we'll find one or both partners who are unwilling to let go. And as a matter of fact, tenaciously hold on to the hurt and the pain, because reliving it not only causes them discomfort, which is becoming a part of their mindset and a part of their being, but also they believe is imparting this. And of course, as we impart it, we absorb it. And so it isn't possible to give out negativity without having the source of negativity coming from within us.
Yes, and another thing we can do is laugh at ourselves, because when we get so tied up with emotion at something someone has said or done, then we can laugh at ourselves, and it really works. It makes a difference. And we can laugh at the other person, and I don't mean derisively or unkindly, but when we're thinking about something, we can just laugh and say, well, that is really weird, and I don't know where they're coming from, but wherever it is, they must have a reason for this. And they have a reason in their own background. They have a reason in their own consciousness.
And that opens up, I think, a part of our discussion that probably should move from the fact that we all know that we get hurt and we all know that we deal with pain from time to time, but how is it that we can deal? What are some practical ways that we can deal with pain and with hurt feelings and with emotional distress and disturbances? And a part of it is that we can add humor to our lives. And interestingly, as we talk to people, so often I ask people who are in difficult times, what makes you happy? What do you really enjoy doing? And it's interesting that many people are not able to answer that question. And so many of us, especially in the world that we live in today, which is seemingly so complex and in many cases very stressful, we get away from having fun. And I think a great example that we have, of course, is children. And children always know how to have fun.
Yeah.
And children know how to have fun no matter what. And out of very negative experiences, they're able to come into a happy time, or at least a time of more joy than they had when they were hurting. As we get older, we seem to lose this ability to be happy or to enjoy ourselves, to laugh, and to be happy in a way. And yet we spend most of our life hoping to be happy.
Yes, but we have to we have to learn to laugh at ourselves. And we can laugh at ourselves more than we can other people, because actually we see the humor in our own actions and how somewhat foolish we are. I know a young mother who was going through a crisis, and her young son, who was like 8 or so, would say to her, "Smile, mother." And it worked. And she realized that she was looking too dour too much at the time. And so then she would deliberately smile. And that's one thing we can do. We can deliberately smile. We can deliberately be objective about our situation. And by objective in this sense would be to see that the other person has a right to whatever they're thinking, and we don't know what their pattern is. We don't know where they're coming from. We don't know their frame of reference. So whatever that is making them do the things that cause us pain, but we cause our own pain. They don't cause the pain. We allow that pain to be a part of ourselves.
Let's go deeper into that, because I
Okay.
think it's an important concept, and we need to understand it, that we do give consent, either consciously or unconsciously, to being hurt, don't we?
Yes, yes, indeed. And not only do we give consent, but we accept that this is. And if we say no, I don't accept that, and we can, then then we don't do it.
And if we choose to view this in a different way, then it becomes different for us, which is fundamental to what we teach and what we talk about. And that is that as we change our way of thinking, we change the quality of our life. And that's what this program is about, and that's what metaphysical philosophy is about, changing our way of thinking. We'd like to pause at this point in the program and offer you the opportunity to receive some information about the concepts and ideas that we're talking about so that you can continue your study at home.
The opportunity to explore and discover in your own home the new thought teachings that this program is sharing with you by sending you a free copy of one of these booklets. Simply address your request to Confident Living at P.O. Box 7726, Long Beach, California, 90807. Whatever your dream, whatever your vision, you can reach it through Confident Living.
Before the break, we were talking about ways of coping with emotional pain, and we want to continue to talk about ways in which you can deal with the pain that you suffer and how you can deal with it in a positive and affirmative way when it presents itself to your way of thinking, to your life, and to your daily experience. We talk about the importance of taking responsibility for our own thoughts and taking responsibility for the way that things that are said and done influence us. One of the things that I think we need to share with people also is the fact that in order to deal with pain, we have to deal with the present moment, don't we?
Yeah.
And so often we deal with circumstances and situations that have taken place in the past, and we let those things continue to revisit us. And so being in the present moment is tremendously important.
Yes, indeed. And if we keep our consciousness in present time, then we're not going to be looking into the past in a painful way. And also, if you mentioned earlier having a high self-esteem, so we would categorize that one needs to have a high self-esteem. That's easier said than done. But affirmations or something like affirmations would help the person, and they have to know what their own capacity is for gaining strength. And usually it would be affirmations. And I know many people who have been able to think of nothing but the pain they're enduring emotionally, and they say an affirmation has nothing to do with that, like I'm whole and strong, or God is renewing my body. And it could be anything they feel comfortable with, they feel that would be necessary for them at the moment. And then it helps them get away from that pain. And it really works that way.
It does, and it's tremendously important to step away from the pain.
Yes.
And to step away from whatever it is that has caused the discomfort, and to be objective about it, and then to affirm our own nature. And for people who do have, and the vast majority of people, all of us at one point or another, have problems with issues of self-esteem and value and worth.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be sensitive to the fact that if we are a person who has difficulty seeing ourselves as worthy of respect and love and lovable, if we have difficulty seeing ourselves as an individual that is able to contribute to life and in an affirmative and positive way, and for a person that lives with a constant negativity of thought, where our minds are constantly dwelling upon negative thoughts, and if we find ourselves often depressed, then we probably have a self-esteem problem that needs to be addressed. And it can be addressed individually, and there are certainly ways to do that. Affirmation is a way, any kind of reinforcement. The other way, of course, is to seek some assistance in a professional way to create the opportunity to build self-esteem. And that doesn't mean necessarily professional counseling. So many people are afraid and dislike professional counseling. There are a myriad of things in the community that are available to build self-esteem. And if we look at youth, for instance, one of the great ways that young people that we use to build self-esteem in young people is sports.
Yeah.
You know, there are some simple things that can be done to create a positive self-image. For adults, it's the same way. It may be an interest in sports, an interest in health. It may be an interest in a hobby. It may be an interest in a political issue. It may be an interest in spiritual issues. But to create a positive and affirmative interest in life and to build upon that, and most importantly, as we reevaluate our own self-esteem, is to surround ourselves with people who affirm us and to identify the fact that if we're in an environment where people do not affirm us, then we need to spend some time, some significant time, in the company of people who will affirm us. And that's very difficult if we're in a relationship or a family situation where there's a lot of negativity. But if that's the case, then there needs to be a significant amount of time outside of that family unit spent surrounded by people who are supportive and building. And then the fundamental issue is, on the relationship side, is to look at the relationship and see if that relationship is actually continuing to negate the positive aspects of the individual's consciousness and awareness.
Yes, and if not, then it's always possible to change a relationship. And also it's possible, most people have a core spiritual value. I don't know anyone who doesn't have a core spiritual value. It wouldn't matter what denomination of church they attend, but they believe in God and they believe in the ultimate source. And so if we can know, and I know that you know, and I know that we're all equal in God's eyes, it wouldn't matter how much money people have, how they dress, what educational basis they have. It's the way they feel connected to Creator God. So if they can just remember when they're feeling despondent that we're all equal in the eyes of God, and truly we are. So if they can just know that, then I think that helps with self-esteem, don't you?
Tremendously so. And of course, a lot of what we do is the marriage, if you will, of the material or the physical and the spiritual. And as you said so well, it has nothing to do with
material things.
Material things. It has nothing to do with denomination or faith tradition. And so it's not an issue of people changing their faith tradition, but as you said so well, most people, almost everyone, has a faith of some kind, even if they have a very nebulous faith. And to build upon that faith tradition, whatever it is, as long as it is affirmative. There are some faith traditions that create some negativity within themselves, and we won't go into that. But that that spiritual background, that spiritual undergirding is a tremendous asset for building self-esteem for many people. And of course, from a totally secular standpoint, there are many other things that can begin to build the issue of self-esteem and self-value so that we see ourselves the way that we really are. And of course, that's what's at the core of metaphysical philosophy, and that is seeing everyone, seeing ourselves, seeing every member of our family, seeing everyone with whom we come in contact, seeing everyone on planet Earth as a positive, affirmative, supportive part of humanity, and both physical and spiritually prosperous and peaceful and balanced and whole and healthy. And that includes the people who say and do the things that we don't like.
That's
And
right.
part of the process that we talk about so much in dealing with pain and dealing with hurt is to see beyond the appearance, to see beyond what people say and what they do, to the core of who they are. And most people who are saying and doing hurtful things are people that have been deeply hurt. And we can't address that. That's not an issue that if you and I get into an argument and you say something to me, I know full well, first of all, I know you wouldn't do such thing because we're good friends and have been for many years. But I know full well that if you said that, it's coming out of something that is in you, and it's in Iris, it's not in Mike.
Right.
And I need, and I would understand the fact that that's not addressed to me. It's addressed to a human hurt that is residing within you at this point in time. And so it's a little bit, not a little, it's a great deal like the teaching that we talk about so much, and that's seeing beyond appearances and overlooking the behavior of people. We don't know what people go through. I'm convinced over and over again as people come to us and talk to us and we deal with people, there's no way that I or any of us can identify what other people are going through. There's no way that I can know the pain or the suffering or the happiness or the joy. And all of us are going through so many different things. And so we need to understand that when we allow people to say and do things that really hurt us, that we have the ability to see beyond that. And we have the ability also to create a healing consciousness and awareness for whatever that is. And I don't know what it is, and we won't know what it is, but we can certainly send that thought process. And we believe, of course, that thoughts are things. And so we send out a thought in response to a thought or an action that we have received. And if we receive a negative thought, we send out a positive one. And that balances what's happening in our environment and in the environment around us.
And very often when we change our own perception, the other person is automatically changed in their perception.
Yes.
And then peace and harmony prevail. We need to touch on, too, that if we don't do something about the emotional pain, if we don't do something to stop this series of thoughts, then it might very well manifest, and often does, as physical pain and physical problems. And it wouldn't always be true, but it would always be true if it goes on for too long a time.
Yeah, it always has the ability to do that. And when we end up being emotionally and spiritually negatively charged, it has an impact upon our physical body.
Yes.
And also, physical pain is either supported or negated by what goes on in our emotional or within our mind.
Yes.
And so by creating a positive mental attitude and avoiding the pains of in the mental and spiritual realm, the psychological and emotional realms, we can overcome or help the pains in the physical. And we all know people who, for instance, have arthritis, or you and I know many people we've dealt with in the last stages of cancer who are able to deal very well with physical pain because of the fact that they create a consciousness and awareness that is at perfect peace and balance. And again, it has nothing to do with a religious tradition. It has to do with whether or not the person is at peace and whether or not the person is affirming life at all of its levels.
As you know, I was a hospice volunteer for 10 years, and I saw that manifest in all the different patients. Those who were at peace and had brought themselves to a peaceful place were not feeling pain, and those who didn't. And I know one woman very well who had multiple myeloma, which is cancer of the bone marrow, and the doctors said her bones would just collapse, and indeed they did. But she never let the pain touch her, and so she really didn't feel it as much. And it was such a beautiful thing to see the courage that she exhibited, and therefore kept herself from having such intense pain. And you've seen that in your work, I'm sure.
We have, over and over. And at the core of what we're talking about is if we can come to a point of peace of mind and spirit we can come to a point of peace of physical being.
Yes.
And that wonderful connectiveness of mind, body, spirit comes together. And it has nothing to do, again, with religion. It has everything to do with the way that we think. And so whatever our tradition, we can change the way that we think, and we can align our mind, body, and spirit and be able to negate these painful experiences.
Yes, and isn't that a beautiful thought, that we do have control of our lives? We have control of our destiny. We have control of whether or not we're going to allow things to hurt us deeply or not, whether it's physical pain or emotional pain.
And it's always our choice.
Yes.
It's always our choice. And so we have to take personal responsibility for the fact that we are where we are because we have chosen to be there in our minds. We
Yes.
may not have chosen the circumstance that we're dealing with in the outer, but we've chosen how we feel within ourselves.
Yes, and of course, I think that very often we choose the whole aspect, both the inner and the outer, just for some reason, and who knows what reason, unfathomable, because it would be the other person's perception of what they want to accomplish, what they want to do, and perhaps just it's on the inner level of their consciousness that they want to help others grow in a certain way. Don't you think that often happens?
I think very definitely. And it happens, and we see it demonstrated over and over again.
Well, it's we need to summarize how people cannot feel pain, and how would you summarize that?
Well, I think the way that people cannot, there are many ways that we've touched upon, but I think the greatest way is to create a peace of mind and spirit. And by creating a peace of mind, peace in mind and spirit, we bring about a healing and an overcoming of the pain that's caused on the emotional level, and also can contribute to eliminating or limiting the pain on the physical level.
And then when we're thinking of what someone else has done to hurt us, we have to eliminate yes, but, yes, but they this, and yes, but that. And just know that they have reasons, their own personal reasons.
And those reasons have nothing whatsoever to do with us. And we have no control over other people, but we do have control over ourselves. And Dr. Freelander and I have been talking with you about concepts and ideas for confident living. We hope that you found this information useful, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
This program is a community outreach of Christ Church. Dr. Mike Costello speaks each Sunday morning at 11 a.m., and Dr. Iris Freelander speaks on Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. at the church. On Sunday evenings at 6 p.m., there is a meditation and healing service. Come and join us. You will be warmly welcomed.